Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Smoko podcast. My name is Alexis Armstrong, your host. Nice to meet you. The Smoko podcast is the place to celebrate and highlight women, trans women, and non binary folk working within STEM and trade occupations. So please tune in, take a break, and join us. We are on Smoko. And today we are extremely lucky to be joined by Nhu Nguyen, who is a certified Porsche Classic technician. She is the first female to do so. She's a Red Seal certified automotive technician. She got into becoming an automotive technician with a love of street racing and being passionate about cars from a very young age, which I'm so excited to ask about and to learn more about. And we're going to kind of talk all things cars and repairs and being an automotive technician and especially Porsches. We're going to talk a lot about Porsches today. So, New, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm jazzed up about this episode because I just think what you do is so, so cool. And I've been such a fan and I've been
Thank
fangirling on every single video of you underneath the car fixing it. Like, I just think it's so badass. And
thank you.
learning about you, I was even more fangirling because I was like, how is she so cool that she started street racing as a teenager? I was like, that's absolutely insane. And I was wondering if we could start there because I know you loved street racing, which is incredible. And then you took a couple of years off before then you returned back into becoming an automotive technician. How did street racing happen? Like, how did that start and how did you first fall in love with cars?
So I first fell in love with cars when I was 16 and got my driver's license and just realized how much I loved to drive, which is
Mm.
ironic because since becoming a mechanic, I don't really do much driving, but I still love to drive and enjoying spirited driving. And I say this all the time, knowing the stereotype or the age-old story of being taken advantage of in shops and just being inquisitive myself. I always made a point to ask questions and to hang around shops. All my friends at that point were car guys, and that's what we were doing then was,
Mm.
street races or whatever. So now if you're caught street racing or even speeding over 50 kilometers an hour above the posted limit, your car is impounded.
Mm.
You don't get a ticket, your car is impounded, you lose your license for so many days. And so this was all before that. This
Mhm.
was, I want to say, almost 25 years ago. It was
Mm.
25 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was a long, long time ago. And this was before Fast and the Furious, right? So it was before the shift in the culture where now with higher horsepower cars that it's just so much more dangerous, I
Mm.
feel now. And with social media, all of the videos you see of people doing burnouts and the people standing around, like that didn't exist then. So I just want to make it clear that
Mhm.
the culture was different then.
Mm.
I mean, it was still frowned upon, but it wasn't as dangerous as it was then because there weren't people standing around with the chance of being hit by the car doing donuts. And so I just kind of hung around with my friends and we would do street races and stuff like that. And my foot being leaden as it was got me into trouble on so
Mm.
many occasions that I can't remember exactly how old I was, but I left the scene. I completely exited left. I sold my car. I stopped driving because it was such like a passion for me then,
Mm.
but it was not good for me,
Mm.
obviously. And at that time, I was working at a used Volkswagen parts place.
Mm.
And so that's how I got started and when I got started. But then I had to exit stage left. And from the time I want to say 18 to 30, that was the couple of years I took a break.
Mhm.
It was more than a couple of years. I tried all sorts of other jobs. I cooked for several years. I tried retail. That was not for me. Office jobs. And while I was proficient at them, and my favorite and one of the jobs that I was most proud of was that I worked with autistic children
Oh.
for, I want to say, almost 5 years. And that was one of the most rewarding jobs.
Mm.
But then I had my son and I needed structure and
Mhm.
stability. And that's when I moved into office jobs. And I did not find that fulfilling.
Mm.
And so when I turned 30, I made a decision to pursue something, try something out that I would enjoy for the rest of, my working
Mhm.
career, which I knew at that time would be, 35 years, 30 to 35 years. So I found a shop that would take me as a pure noob during my interview. It was a friend's family shop, and his
Mm,
brother, his older brother, interviewed me. And I said that, I had delivered parts and I was, familiar with some stuff and that I could probably do an oil change.
mm.
And he's like, that's the least of your problems.
It's like that is the starting
Yeah.
point.
But they gave me a shot. And
Yeah.
within the first week, I was doing alignments. I'm a fast learner. I've always liked to tinker and understand how things work. And they were just fantastic giving me the
Mm,
shot, and they were great teachers. And, starting out at the bottom. So I took almost a 50% pay cut leaving the office job to become an automotive service tech.
mm,
I spent 6 months at that shop, got registered with the automotive service apprenticeship program here in Ontario, where I live. And that's a 3-level course. And so, yeah, within 6 months, I was registered. I graduated in 3 years and I wrote for my license at 3.5 years. I wanted to write immediately, but they said I had to wait for the 3.5. And then during that time that I was going through my apprenticeship, a brand new Porsche dealership was opening up
mm,
and they were hiring all positions. And I'm so proud to have spent time there. The majority of my time had been at that Porsche dealership.
mhm.
They built a facility with change rooms for a female tech. So
Amazing.
they were progressive then.
Yeah.
Whereas now, a lot of the buildings are from decades ago and they don't have those accommodations.
Mhm.
And so I find it like, I digress, but I find that a lot of things that are holding some of the places back from hiring women is they say that, well, we don't have the facilities for you.
Yeah.
But you know what? You just make do because where I work now, they didn't have that built in, but they found a solution. We found a solution that worked. Yeah,
Mhm.
so I spent almost 8 years at the Porsche dealership, and that's where I got started with Porsche.
Oh my goodness. I love that story. Like,
Thanks.
no, I think it's so incredible on so many levels. First, I love that caveat that the culture back in street racing was very, very different and that the danger level was different. The kind of recklessness, maybe, of like endangering other people was different. I think that was a really good ad of just making sure to be like, yeah, I was still a punk kid, but we were doing it a little bit more responsible. My foot was still very leaden, but like we weren't going on the news every single night.
And we
I,
weren't doing it for like global clout.
yeah. You're just doing it because you loved cars and you loved going fast and you loved
Yeah.
driving, like the act of driving, which I think is really beautiful. I also love this part of you said it so casually of just being like, okay, at 30, I did a big change of my life and I decided to go in a different path. But like that takes so much guts and like it's so much bravery to be like, you know what? No, I'm going to set like a path for myself. I'm going to choose something that I love and I'm going to go down that route for like 35 years. I think that's just incredible that you made that decision. And then since then, you've exploded. I mean, you're now a red seal. Like you went through it again very casually, but like that's a lot of work in a very short period of time to get where you're at. And I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about that decision that you knew it was going to be cars, that you were like, okay, my change in path. How did you come back to it? Was that just something that you always missed? Or is it something that just kind of felt right? Was it partly also just because of like connection and having that family shop, which I think is so beautiful that they also saw something in you and gave you that shot. But what was that decision? Why did you make that decision?
So it wasn't the connection to the shop. They were actually my second choice. I
Okay.
had gone to the shop that I was taking my car to at the time, who I had developed a relationship over, like a decade,
Yeah.
and he was hesitant. He didn't want to take me on. So then I found I don't know how I stumbled upon my other friend who
Mm,
actually went to school with my sister. So I knew them, but I didn't have that close
mhm,
relationship with them until I started working with them. But it was just something that I missed,
mm,
something that I always wanted to do, but coming out of high school, I didn't have the discipline. And I say this all the time. I feel like if I had gone into it leaving high school, I probably would have messed it up. I didn't
mm,
have the discipline then. I wouldn't have stuck to it. I didn't see the possibilities.
mm.
Like the possibilities now still like floor me. I can't believe that I've taken it this far.
Yeah.
We don't know that this is a possibility because we don't see it. And the
Mhm,
fact that I'm living it
mhm.
is still surreal to me. Like I've been doing this for 12 years now. So it hasn't been a short time, but going to the apprenticeship courses as a 30-year-old woman with like high school students, it was strange.
Yeah.
But wonderful at the same time because I was mature enough to know that this is what I want to do. I've
Mm,
always been a tinker. I like taking things apart and putting it back together or making sure it works. Like these things always attracted me and I didn't really see any other possibility. Like
mm.
this was something that not being a morning person, I would be happy to wake up to. I'm still not a
Okay.
morning person. It's still tough, but at least I'm happy when I get there, right?
Yeah.
So and I talk about it. I'm a huge proponent for the trades. And I realized that for a long time, even though there's a shift now, schools and society were
Mm,
pushing people away from the trades, there's a massive shortage of
mhm.
tradespeople now. And I know a lot of people who chose, like the white collar route or those kinds of routes who didn't take or see the opportunities in trades or look down on trades who ended up turning to the trades and finding it as fulfilling as I find it, right? So I'm super happy that I just decided to do it.
Me too. Like you can tell that it's been, whether you knew it or not, it was this kind of undercurrent in your life from like loving cars and tinkering. And I love that all of a sudden everything kind of clicked. And
Clicked.
I like that call out of sometimes also being like, yeah, you know what? If I had made that decision at 18, it probably would have looked really differently. Like I probably
Yeah.
wouldn't have been ready for it. I always think of that as well with like my own personal career that I'm like, no, I was a punk kid until I was probably like 27, until I was too old to be a punk kid. Like there's
Yeah.
some things happen a little bit later and you're like, yeah, that was the right time for it to happen.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's okay.
yeah.
It's totally okay.
Yeah,
And
like,
another thing too that I'm grateful for that I started it later in life was that I had my son
mm,
and I was able to be a dedicated mother and not have to divide my attentions because I'm the type of person I want to put as much of myself into any one thing, right? And if I was in a position that where I had to choose being a mother or
mm-mm,
being a tech, that would have been incredibly difficult.
yeah.
I don't know how I would have handled that. So not getting into the trade until my son was a little bit older, you know, the demands are different. He's in school. I
Mhm.
don't have to nurse. I was at a Jill of all trades, which is an
Oh,
event
yeah.
that the colleges are putting on. And the keynote speaker is a lady who went through the same training, except when she went to school, she was nursing.
Oh
And
my
so she was
gosh.
talking about running between classes to like pump her breast milk. And I was like, that's amazing.
Like you
Like,
rock star. That's insane. I could
right?
never imagine to be like, sorry, hold on, fixing an engine and be like, I just have to go sort myself.
I'm
Like that's
leaking here.
wild. Yeah, like
It was
leaking girls.
amazing.
My
And she
God.
said, like, one time her classmates asked, like, "Where do you run off to all the time?" She's like,
Mm.
"Well, I'm lactating. I gotta go do this." And they were just like, yeah. But it just speaks to how incredible we are when we are determined to do
Mhm.
what we want to do.
Mm.
Yeah.
I agree. No, I love that determination. And like, yeah, again, like I know you've been in this for 12 years now, but the amount of work and like the breadth of work that you've been able to do in that 12 years, you can tell that you're very, very determined because it is a resume of all resumes. And
Thank you.
I would like to talk a little bit about like maybe that first learning curve, because you said when you went to your shop and they had this wonderful, they were so lovely that they gave you a shop where you were like, okay, like I could maybe change an oil pan. And they were like, okay, good luck on that.
Yeah.
How, how is that process of actually starting your education and learning, kind of becoming a mechanic? I know you did your apprenticeship and you did like formal education, obviously within the trades, but how was that actual experience? Was that something that was challenging? Was it something because you're a tinkerer that it was really easy for you? Was there something that you instantly fell in love with and excelled at? What was that experience like?
It was a little bit of both because there's so many
Mm,
different aspects of being a mechanic that I excel at some and some I continually need to work on.
mm,
Electronics, for example. I feel like when it's like a hard object in front of me that I can see what goes
yeah.
together, how that is just for me intuitive and I just get that so much better than when it's more theoretical or I
Mm,
can't see it and touch it in front of me, right? So I did find that a lot of it was just once I understood how something worked, then it was easy to just pick it up.
mm,
But like I said, there's still some things that I work on. And I feel like, so when I was starting at 30, I felt like I was always late to the game. because some
Mm,
of these guys have been doing it since they were kids or teenagers, with their dads, or they've just been doing it for so long that I always and still feel like I'm not there yet. That
mm,
like I'm not confident in my capabilities or my skills in some areas and most areas. Like I feel, but I feel maybe that's a good thing that the humility keeps me learning.
hmm.
I never want to be that person that's like, I know everything.
Yeah,
Don't teach
no,
me anything. Like,
a
there's
cup full.
and it's constantly changing. But yeah, it came almost naturally, I
Mm,
would say, once I see how or understands how something works. It's like I just get it. And by that same token, so one of your questions was why Porsche?
yeah.
And so before I started working on Porsches before 2013. I didn't know anything about Porsche. I didn't have any appreciation for Porsche. But then once I started working on them, because I've always been a Volkswagen VAG
Hmm.
fan, and then working at the small independent shop, the first shop that I worked at, I put hands on different makes, different models, and I got to see and appreciate and learn how different companies who employ different engineers, different tactics, different mindsets approach the same problem.
Mm,
And for me, the Porsche VAG Volkswagen like approach just makes sense. It just makes
dramatic.
sense.
Yeah,
It makes
there's
more sense to me,
yeah.
right? But my brain doesn't work like everybody else's brain. So I know other techs who Porsche doesn't make sense.
Mm.
It will be like a domestic brand or an Asian brand that makes more sense. So I feel like it's like kind of like innately wired into our brain what works and what doesn't work, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense.
Oh, that's so interesting. Oh my goodness. I have to ask a follow-up question on that because I find
Sure.
that fascinating. But I love that it made sense and I love that you were a visual kind of tactile learner with cars because cars are so geographic kind of focused, right? You have like your
Mhm.
German cars, your UK cars. Can you see that within kind of a region to be like all German engineers, they approach this problem very similar or they design it very similar? I thinking Porsche is German. Am I correct with that or am
Yes,
I wrong?
yes.
Okay.
Porsche is German. Porsche is
Okay.
German. The approach, I feel like, I don't know if it's like terrain geographical, but mindset geographical,
Mm.
like cultural
Culture. Hmm.
geographic. Yeah. I find that the Porsche approach is, I'm always trying to be diplomatic here.
Yeah, it's fair.
The Porsche, the Porsche approach is sporty first,
Mm.
performance first, whereas Mercedes, for example, is also German, but they're comfort and luxury first,
Oh, okay. It's more
right?
branding. It can be kind of
Yeah,
associated to the brand of the
yeah.
car.
So in that sense, it's not geographic, but branding
Hmm.
or mindset. Yeah,
Yeah. Mindset of
definitely.
like maybe function of the car. By
Yeah,
branding,
and
I
some
mean more
places,
function. Yeah.
yeah, and then some, like let's say the Swedish brands put function over form.
Mm.
Like that's their motto. The domestic brands are bigger, more power, right?
Yeah.
So like there are differences within the brands. You definitely see it.
Oh, that's very cool. No, thank you very much for that answer. And another point, because I think you brought up something that I think does affect a lot of women of this idea of feeling like you're maybe a step behind or feeling like, okay, well, I'm not up to snuff compared to these guys because they've been doing it forever, just because it's their like socialization. They get to hang out with their dads, whereas like we usually have to try to find these careers ourselves, like later in life. So thank you for bringing up that point because I think a lot of people will resonate with that. When we're talking about your tasks and your day to day of being a mechanic, I know that's a huge part of your Instagram. It's every single time I geek out is when you're in the shop and you're doing something different and I get to see what your day looks like. Do you have a favorite thing that you do as a mechanic or like a favorite problem that when it comes into the shop, you're like, excellent, I want to redo the entire engine. Like this is for me.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Being able to, so I focused on the classic Porsche because I get to build engines.
Mm.
I love building the engines. It's a puzzle. It's a giant puzzle that's disgusting and dirty when I get it. I get to break it apart. I get to clean it. I get to make it new. And I find that incredibly satisfying.
Mm.
But I like all of the restoration process because I just like to make things look nice and new. I guess maybe that's the girly in me or whatever. But it's not just a girly because I know like one of my colleagues like the same thing. It's incredibly satisfying not just to
Mm,
make something work, but to look good,
mm,
right? Like it's that added value that we're
mm.
offering to our clients.
I think it's a good point too of like I think that there's so much value in making something pretty. Like I love making something pretty and gorgeous when it comes out. And like Porsche is such a beautiful car and it has such a classic shape that it's also so
Yeah.
gorgeous that the engine is going to be it's going to start off disgusting and like dirty and then it's going to end up being as beautiful as the outside of the car. With Porsche, I would like to talk about a really cool stat that you have under your belt that you're the first female to be a Porsche classified technician. Could you kind of explain what this means and like what makes this certification so unique? And I heard you even brought out the president of Porsche Canada out for a spin in a model car that you built. And I was wondering if we could talk about that because I'm sure that must have been a really big moment for you.
Yeah, yeah, that was
Yeah.
huge because
Yeah.
because first of all, I've got the president at the time of Porsche Canada. It wasn't a model car, we wouldn't fit, but it was a full-size car. So I'll start from the beginning, I guess, of it was while I was still at the Porsche dealership, Porsche PAG headquarters in
Mm,
Germany had at that time, around that time, developed a new curriculum for Porsche Classic.
mm,
And that would be to train all of the new techs their classic line. And Porsche has part of the reason why I love Porsche is they have an incredible support system, both producing parts for their classics, literature, these
mm.
training certification program to support their classic line. And I think it's like something like 70% of Porsches are still on the roads.
Oh, wow.
So it's, like they support this community that is an incredible community. And so they just developed this curriculum, and it is, I think, 6 courses over general service, engine repair, transmission, suspension. I can't remember the last few. But I went to California where the training facility was for the classic stuff over the course of several years, did all the training, and then they had a certification exam which was both theory and practical, and they had the instructors from the Porsche Academy in Germany come and
Cool.
proctor the exam, which was
Yes.
nerve-wracking.
Yeah,
Which would
I
have been
said cool. You were
nerve-wracking.
like, not cool. Not cool at all.
Not
Very
cool. Not
scary.
cool.
Very nervous.
Not cool. But yeah, so I passed, and so they had just developed the curriculum. So when I passed, I was in North America's first class.
Mm,
And
that's amazing.
even around the world, there had only been one other class that had completed the program and the certification. Since leaving Porsche, I'm not really sure where the number falls now, but I left Porsche right at the onset of COVID. So I
Mhm.
know training kind of halted and all this. So that's where and how that all came about. I know I'm not the only one working on Classic Porsche. My friend Stacy in London is a Porsche Classic instructor
Oh, cool.
with Porsche out there. Yeah, but
Amazing.
because she's an instructor, they didn't let her take the qualification exam.
Which
They're like,
kind of
"You're
makes
already
sense.
qualified."
Yeah, it kind of makes sense a little bit to be like, it's kind of
Yeah.
cheating, but like you already instructed.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's a huge privilege and honor
Mm.
that I have that feather in my cap for sure.
Yeah, completely. Could
Yeah.
you speak to how you ended up driving around the Porsche
Oh yes.
president? How did that happen?
Yes, sorry. In 2018, Porsche Canada had the first Porsche Classic competition, and it was a competition amongst
Cool.
the dealers in Canada, and it was really an initiative to showcase what the dealers were doing to support Classic
Mm,
Porsche and what our capabilities were. And so the competition was just to restore a Classic Porsche.
mm.
And my dealership acquired 1987 944 Turbo, which was the first Porsche that our dealer principal had acquired or his father had
Okay.
acquired,
Oh, wow.
and was the model that one of our like used car sales manager used to race. So
Oh,
there was a
wow.
lot of history
Cool.
with the model. It
Yeah.
wasn't the same specific car, but so I spent the next 11 months restoring that car, and it was my first restoration.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was an enormous learning curve because I did all of the parts, but it was incredible because I learned how much work goes into restoring a
Mm,
car. and the different levels of restoration. You know, you can do just a mechanical restoration. You
Mhm.
can do the full complete rotisserie where everything is removed and you put just the shell and repaint and everything. And so that took 11 months to do. And I came in sixth out of 12, I
Mm.
think, in Canada. And being my first time at the rodeo, I was
That's
immensely proud. Yeah,
yeah.
immensely proud. And I got the Passion Award. And I think maybe because I got the Passion Award, I got to take the president of Porsche Canada in the car on the racetrack in Quebec, Mont Tremblant. Yeah. And that was
Ah,
nerve-wracking too, because he's
yeah.
like chatting with me and I'm not like a trained driver. So
Yeah.
I missed an apex and he's like
You're like, "I don't know, man. I got excited."
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that was an incredible experience.
That is so cool. I could also see me that being a little bit nerve-wracking too, to be like, don't be too leaded footed. Like, don't like go a little bit chill.
Yeah.
Like, show
Yeah.
them what you can do, but maybe not like take every single corner at like Mach speed.
Yeah, no.
Oh my goodness. That like knew that's so incredible. Like it's incredible as a company that Porsche has that mentality of service and has that kind of ode to past models because I don't know if that happens in other companies or other kind of automotive brands, but I
I
love that almost all of the brands or all of the models are still on the road. Like that's pretty incredible that you guys can
yeah.
still do a full restoration and repair all models. For your car that won sixth place and the Passion Award, which is incredible, did you do the full rotisserie? Did you do the full restoration? How did that
We
happen?
did send it out to get repainted, but we didn't
Mm.
strip everything. Most of the interior was actually in really great condition. So we got a new dashboard. It was like maroon interior with like a charcoal gray
Oh,
exterior, but it came from Arizona. So the portion of the car that was in the sun
mm.
was dry. Like the front seats had turned black from being out in the sun, which was really weird, and the steering wheel had cracked and the dashboard had cracked. So I had to source replacements for those and an upholsterer for the front seats. And then we repainted, but we left the rest of the interior because it
Mm.
was actually really quite nice. The purple, the maroon
Yeah,
was
it's
still
gorgeous.
vibrant.
Yeah.
hmm But I had the full engine bay out, and it's a transaxle, so it's engine and like torque tube
Mhm.
and transmission on the back end. So that was all down, suspension down, and so all of that was taken out and refreshed. I didn't have to tear down that engine completely because actually it was running
Mm.
really well, but I did like a top end and a full clean and everything like that.
That's still a lot of work. Like that's
It
still.
was a
Yeah.
lot of work. There was a lot of nuts and bolts, let me tell you.
Yeah, like roughly days and days of your life just putting bolts back on.
Yeah.
Like
And the key was just organizing. Like I had everything separated in bags, and then I would lay out each bag
Mm.
and label the bag and take a picture of each bag. So because I sent everything out for cleaning and for replating,
Okay.
and so when I got everything back, I had to make sure I knew where everything went, because if it's just a box of bolts, like, like how do you begin? But like
Oh.
Lego, everything comes in like specific bags. You got
Mm.
to approach it like that.
Yeah, I feel like having your son was, like, perfect to be like, "Okay, I know this, I know how Lego works, I
I
know
got
what goes wrong," like,
Where
I'm
are
a
the
mom.
instructions?
Yeah, exactly. I've done a lot of IKEA furniture, and I know how scary it is to
Yeah.
find a bolt afterwards that you're like, "Where was this supposed to go? I hope not
Yeah.
the engine." Like, I really I hope it wasn't a key thing.
Yeah.
No, that's incredible. And like, I think the work that you do is just, it's so complicated. You can see how much you love it, but you can just see how technical you have to be. And you can see how skilled you are while you're like fixing an
Yeah.
engine and doing a full restoration of a car is incredible. We've already kind of talked a little bit about like why Porsche is super, super fun and that it's exciting to work on. And there's something about your brain that is the same as a German engineer, which I think is
I wouldn't say the same, that's stretching it, but I
okay.
understand, like I'm reading the same book,
Yeah.
Cole's Notes
Maybe
maybe, but
similar enough that, like, there's something there. I was wondering maybe we could talk about a different brand or any other brand of your choosing of, like, do you have any other brand or dream car or model or anything that you are really itching up to come into the shop that you're like, "I hope that this type of car one day is broken and I get to work on it."
it is also Porsche. But I do love, like, before I got in with Porsche, I'm a huge American muscle girl. Like, I love American
Mm,
muscle. I have a tattoo that is derived from my appreciation of muscle cars.
mm,
But because my expertise and my strengths lie with Porsche, I understand and am familiar with it. That's where I tend to lean.
mm.
And my dream model that I would want to work on is the flat 12 917.
Okay.
So early last year, I actually got an opportunity to go out to LA, to the Experience Center in LA, where Porsche Motorsports North America has their headquarters, and had the opportunity to attend and assist in the rebuild of a Porsche 962, which is a flat six, but also a race engine. So the 917 that I want to do is two of those flat sixes put together.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I got you where
yeah,
you're going. Okay, so
yeah,
it's like, is it still a race car? I'm guessing it's still like heavy, heavy horsepower, very
yeah,
fast. Is there a
yeah, yeah,
certain year or is there a certain like design type that like,
yeah, yeah. I think you would recognize if you see it.
okay, we'll
I mean,
put a
I guess
photo
I'm
on it.
so, yeah, I'm so immersed in the Porsche world. I'm like, how could you not recognize it? But I realize that that's not the case. Like, not everyone is familiar, right? So I don't know where the first time I saw the 917 was, but I think it was the Porsche Pink Pig. So it's
Mm,
pink livery and
oh,
it's marked off in like dotted lines. Like, when you see like the image at a butcher shop where
yep.
the cuts of
Mhm.
the meat are like drawn out. So that's what the livery is like.
Cool. That's really
Yeah, it's
cool.
really cute and it's pink,
Mhm.
right? So like I love that one. I love that one. And there's a funny story if the story is correct, it's a funny story behind why they chose the pink pig. But so that's my I would like to be there for
I
that.
love that. That's really cool. Could you tell this funny story of the pink pig? I'm
Yeah, so
hooked. I want to know.
I had heard or read somewhere that early days in early races, I don't know if it was Le Mans or Spa, but Ferrari was making fun of them for it being such a fat looking car. And so they're like, fat, we'll show you fat. And I think this was when, and I hope I don't get in trouble for this because I'm not great at history, but this was the onset or the development of the turbos for the Porsche. That's why the 917s were so successful. And so they ended up winning and winning
Oh,
and winning and
wow.
winning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So pink pig.
Pink pig. Yeah, it's a fat
Yeah.
car, but it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Ferrari didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love that story and I love that model. We'll definitely put a photo up and I'll definitely Google it after this because I don't have it in my mind perfectly.
Gotcha.
But I'll bring it up so that everybody can see what your favorite car looks like. And that's the model.
Okay.
Near to end it, and I'm gonna probably combine these two questions. It's basically like looking at the future of the automotive industry. Like, where do you think it's headed? And then part of this is, I mean, as a consumer, I think what we see really like obviously on the road and everywhere is the movement for electric vehicles. And in terms of maintenance and repairs and being a mechanic, how do these perform like compared to the rest? What does this look like for you guys? Is this something that is super, super different for you guys or like a huge learning curve to figure out how to fix an electric car versus a standard car?
So it is actually quite a departure.
Okay.
Aside from the wheels, the brakes, everything is vastly different. It's not mechanical anymore, right? You're just
Mm,
doing electrical diagnosis and then you replace a component, which the automotive industry was kind of moving towards that way and why I lean towards the classic stuff. And because I've leaned so heavily towards the classic stuff, the e-cars is so outside of my wheelhouse.
You probably don't even see it like on a day to
Not
day
not
or
much. Like
yeah.
we're at my shop, we're a tuning shop, so we'll see them for, like body kits or
Mhm.
wheels and stuff like that. Some people will come in to put like a sound box in to get like exhaust sounds. But but that's just outside of my wheelhouse altogether. With regards to where it's going or the future, I don't know. I feel like that technology is still transitioning and changing. I just read somewhere that Apple is
Yeah.
shutting their production down. I know that with electric motors, you get instant torque, which is awesome. And that's really cool, for fast and stuff like that. But I read or I saw an interesting video clip on Toyota's motto. And I don't know if it's true or not, but I
Mm,
find it interesting because I kind of see other clues. Is they have this rule.
mm,
Apparently it's called the 1:6:90 rule or ratio, where the raw materials required for one EV battery car is equivalent to that of six plug-in hybrids or 90
uh-huh.
hybrids.
Yeah.
And over their lifetime, the carbon savings over those 90 vehicles is 73 times greater than of one EV car, right? And I know that they don't really lean towards the EV much. And I know that Toyota is working with BMW to develop hydrogen
Mm-hmm.
engines.
Yeah.
And I'm actually quite fascinated with that. And I want to see where that goes because I know that you don't need to change the architecture a lot to
Mm-hmm.
make hydrogen work with our existing ICE engines. So I'm very interested. I want to see ICE engines do better. I know that that's a real issue, but I don't know that EV is the solution.
Yeah. No, I kind of feel the same way from it from a very different perspective of just being on the other side of resource extraction and within like a geology and a mining background is the amount.
And on the back end
Yeah.
or at the final stages, the infrastructure for disposal,
Hmm. Doesn't
like
exist yet.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
And if a battery goes wrong, it's thousands and thousands of dollars to replace. That's not in anyone's budget.
Hmm.
So, like your immediate exhaust or lack of exhaust is great, but there's so much more to that picture. And the fires
Hmm.
of EV batteries, those are horrifying.
Yeah, those are terrifying. Yeah, the like
Yeah.
anything like lithium fire or anything like that is a very, very scary thing that it could be
Yeah.
potentially unstable. I agree as well. I kind of fall along the same level of skeptical and like would like to learn more about EV and the true cost and the true environmental savings of it, just because I think but I feel like that in most ways, truthfully, in most things that we consume, I think how we look at environmental impact is very surface level. And we only look at CO2 when we don't look at like total holistic package
Yeah.
that you're like, okay, well, it took like a lot of rare earth elements that are all like shallow based in one location and
Yeah.
all ocean
Yeah.
based. Like they're very hard to get to. And
Yeah. And who's
fit.
who's getting those, like how are you extracting them? And
Yeah.
yeah, no, there's so many things to consider. But it is an important topic to address. It
Yeah.
is it is something that needs to be done for sure.
An important like movement. If I could ask one
Yeah.
follow up new is you brought up this idea of hydrogen, which I love because I think hydrogen would be a really, really cool replacement and something cool in the future. But you brought up a word that I didn't know and I didn't understand an ICE engine.
Yeah, internal combustion engine.
Internal, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
Sorry.
was like, I was like, what is ICE?
We're running on ice
Yeah,
now?
I was like, I will need to talk about this because
Sorry, sorry.
internal combustion engine. No, that's perfect. That's all I needed is just a
Awesome.
jargon check. Well, last one, I'll sneak one more question in just to end it and to wrap it. No, this has been so incredible. And I think that your story is just amazing. I think that the work that you do is amazing. This has been the joy of
Thank
my
you.
day is talking with you. I was wondering if you could give advice to any young women that are maybe in the same position, because I think you offer this fearlessness of being like at 30 to be like, yep, you know what? I'm going to go for it. And if anyone is maybe in the same position that they don't really know what the next step is and they want to make that big leap, any advice to them?
Self-reflection, a lot of like,
Mm,
what do I really want to do? What will I stick to? And then the rest will kind of sort itself out. It's important to not give up just because, and I say this all the time, just because, you go to one place and they're not supportive doesn't mean that the rest of the places aren't supportive. There are so many options and so many avenues within the same trade or field that we have like so many options. And I feel like at this day and age, in this place and time, it is a reality for us. It's not just a possibility, it's a reality for us. This is and can be a thing.
mhm,
And so we can take advantage of it, or maybe take advantage is not the right word, but we can make it happen.
mhm,
And we will have the support, and we do have the support,
mhm,
between all of my instructors at school, my managers, my classmates, my benchmates, everyone's been supportive. And I know I talk to a lot of women who come up against like people who don't support,
Mhm.
but they are like far and few between. Or if you do find them, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, they're stuck in that
In the
place. You don't
past.
have to be exactly. You don't
Yeah.
have to be stuck in that place, right?
Mhm.
And like I work with Movember. I've been a Movember sister supporter for the last 12 years because of this, because of the support that I received from all of the men that I've worked with and
Mhm.
mentored or menteed under, is because I know that it's important that we do this together. That we can't
Mhm.
keep pitting each other against each other. It's
No.
it's it doesn't work. We're just so much stronger together.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that advice. Uh,
Alexis, thank you so much. You've been amazing to talk to.
you have too. This has been so much fun. I'm so excited to geek out and I'm so excited to learn more about cars. I'm going to go down a deep dive of that one model and be like, how does this work? What is this? What is an ICE engine? So,
Thank you
New,
so much.
this has been lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on
Oh,
Smoko.
thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you, Alexis.
You're welcome. And for those listening, thank you very much for doing so. We will see you next Wednesday. Okay. Bye bye for now, guys.